Hey everyone. I want to take this opportunity to share with you my perspective on what's been happening all across our nation, all the protests in the wake of the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. One officer has been charged with second-degree murder, and the other three officers were just charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder. My goal today is to just maybe try to help you understand just a little bit why things are happening, why the things that are happening are happening. I have a lot of conversations with my white friends, and for the sake of clarity during this video, I have to draw distinctions between black and white, the white community and the black community, okay? So please just give me a little latitude in that. So when someone wants to have a conversation with me about race, and I have a lot of conversations about racial issues due to my involvement with the NAACP. That's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. I joined because I ran for Dayton City Commission 5 years ago. It was just kind of expected that candidates would join. I didn't even know that much about the NAACP. And you didn't want to be the one candidate who showed up for the NAACP candidate forum, the Meet the Candidates night, and be the candidate who was not a member. So I joined, but what happened along the way was I learned a different narrative. It was really interesting to me, and I really began learning a lot. Inevitably, the conversations that I have, they kind of broaden to include topics such as implicit bias, systemic racism, or privilege. And look, I'm well aware that just mentioning the word privilege can set people on edge. It makes some people really angry. But what I want you to know is that's part of the problem. The majority of us never give things like that a minute's thought. I never had to. But when it's suggested that we have any privilege over someone who's black, we get offended or defensive, and we just try and justify our side. Well, you don't know how hard I've had it, and we start to tell our story and make excuses when rather than just accepting the simple fact that it exists and that I benefit from it in every area of my life, every day of my life. Now, because my daughters are white, they never had to think about how they wore their hair on a job interview. They never had to worry about how they were dressed, if their hair was too ethnic or if how they were dressed was too black. That's something they just never had to give consideration to. So when I'm going to have a conversation with someone, oftentimes the first thing that I'll say is this. First, we have to agree that you and I have no idea what it's like to be black. We can't even pretend to sort of understand. We have no idea what it's like to be black. And if we can agree on that, then we can start to have a meaningful dialogue. I had a good friend not that long ago tell me, we were having a meal together, I think it was breakfast, and he kind of banged his hand on the table and just tell me just one way that you and I have privilege over someone who's black. After I picked myself up off the floor, after he said that, I said, okay, how about the fact that you and I can walk into Target and we're probably not going to be followed around? Can we at least agree that it's just more likely that we would be followed around if we were black? Can we agree on that? Then I said, would you agree that you and I can drive through certain parts of town and we probably won't have a problem? Or let me say it this way. If we were black, do you think there might be certain parts of town that if we drove through them that we may be just more likely to get pulled over just because we were black? Just ask any of your black friends and see what they have to say about that. You see, the white community, we have to stop bristling, tensing up over these matters and try to understand how we process and navigate the world is very different from how black and brown people experience the world. I had another friend ask me, do you really think organizations like the NAACP are still necessary? And I'm like, do you watch the news? At the time he asked me that, there was a particular situation in the news regarding a black man who was on his cell phone in the lobby of a hotel in Portland, Oregon. And he was registered there as a guest, and the security guards accused him of trespassing and escorted him out. This stuff happens all the time, and the black community knows it. I think the thing is that the white community, we're just now coming to terms with it. See, we have to ask ourselves regarding the situation in Minneapolis, would those police officers even have been charged if that video didn't exist? Maybe, but maybe not. But the video speaks very clearly as to what happened, and now they've been charged. The Black community is just so very, very tired of things like this happening. Seeing yet another Black male killed on video is just traumatizing. My Black friends are scared for their children and their grandchildren. How did we get here? Well, that's a much longer and much broader series of conversations that I can't even begin to engage in here today. I don't have enough time. But I want you to know those conversations are happening now more than ever before. I know because I'm in them. See, I don't have to be defensive about being white and the privilege that goes with it. I just have to acknowledge it. Denying it is only more hurtful to those who know that we have it. Denying it is it's really the heart of the issue. Now, don't allow the destruction of property that you see on TV to take your eyes off the real issue, that a man lost his life at the hands of police who were sworn to protect and serve. See, I'm on the City of Dayton Community Police Council, and I'm in a lot of tough meetings with community members and leaders where we hash through these kinds of issues. When there's a police-involved shooting, I'm in a briefing before there's a press conference, before the public is even notified. I'm in those briefings. You see, we really can't understand how slavery and segregation and redlining and the education system, et cetera, have all affected the Black community in more ways than you and I can even really understand. I'm just determined to do my best to not contribute to that system any longer. But somehow, we just expect the Black community to just kind of get over it because, well, you know, they have Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan and Oprah and, oh, President Obama, you've had a Black president, like that fixes anything. Did you know that the Star-Spangled Banner was written in 1814, was written 50 years before Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation was enacted in 1862? So it was from 1814 to 1862. And it wasn't for another 100 years until the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. That's in my lifetime. I've come to learn that land of the free and home of the brave just doesn't mean the same thing to everyone, especially when it was written while slavery was still going strong in America. I really hope that you can hear my heart in this. I just want to help bring some understanding to those of us in the white community. I just want us all to try to understand and to try to see the world through their eyes. You know, one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the past 5 years is just learn to listen. During Black History Month a couple of years ago, I was in they were showing a movie. I watched Selma, and then there was another documentary. And after the documentary, the chairs were pulled from rows and put into a circle, and we had a community conversation. And I was one of two white people in the room. There were probably 100, maybe 125 people in the room. And I got to tell you, it was one of the most difficult things that I've ever sat through, as I felt weird. I felt like I wanted to apologize for all white people for all time, for all the atrocities. I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. I felt guilty. I found myself trying to deflect all my feelings when what I learned was I thought, and I really felt like the Lord spoke to me and said, Scott, you just need to listen. So I listened as they had a conversation around what took place in the movie. And afterward, the woman who facilitated the conversation, I introduced myself. I said, hi, I'm Scott Sliver. And she said, I know who you are. And she said, I want you to know how much it means to our community, how much it means to us that you sat through that conversation and just listened and you're trying to understand. And I went, oh, that's really what it's all about. Just listening and trying to understand. I don't pretend I have everything figured out. I know I have a lot more figured out than I did even 5 years ago, but I don't have it all figured out, but I'm working on it. Recently, I've been meditating on Isaiah 58. I'm going to read part of it this weekend when I introduce the message. And I want you to know this is what we are all called to. It's out of Isaiah 58. I think I'm going to read 6 through 12, and it's about the kind of fast that the Lord desires. Is this, starting in verse 6, is this not the kind of fasting that I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then, I love this, then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, here am I. If you do away with the yoke of oppression and with the pointing of the finger and malicious talk, and if you spend yourselves on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness and your night will become like the noonday. The Lord will guide you always, and he will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land. He will strengthen your frame, and you will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called the repairer of broken walls, the restorer of streets with dwellings. Tell you what, that's what we're called to loose the chains of injustice, untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and to break every yoke, to share, I did say every yoke, I'm not sure I said oak, to break every yoke and to share our food with the hungry, to repair the broken walls and to restore the streets and dwellings. You know, Jesus said, a new command I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you. We are called to love God. We're called to love our neighbor. We're called to love our enemies. That's what we're called to. It's really what I want my life to be about. You know, I'm always happy to have a conversation around these topics. This is hard stuff, but hopefully this will help you as you navigate and you're trying to understand everything that's happening around us. Feel free to shoot me a message with any questions or comments at scott@daytonvineyard.com. I would love to dialogue with you. And I just want to say thank you for listening. God bless you, and I love you.